Exclamation, everybody, and welcome to Coding Learn. It is by 12 Add 1 and published by Baker's Dozen. So if you're keeping score there, I believe that's 1313. And it is fully released out on Steam, currently $2 US. Now, anyone who's followed me for any length of time knows I like to dig into and do first impressions on programming puzzly games, since it is something that I do for a living. And I like to see if there's something that would be good for beginners and stuff like that when you want to try to learn how to program. This game does have a note on it. On its store page, it says you need to know a little bit about programming before you jump in. So we'll see. We'll see how this goes. Obviously, you have something, a title like Coding Learn, it's kind of, you kind of think maybe you're starting from scratch, but that doesn't always have to be the case. And so we'll sit here and play a little bit of this. It's really meant to teach you C# language. And since I'm not all that familiar with the C# language, although I do program in Java for a living, so C# is just basically Java with different package layouts and stuff, and a lot less functionality. Zing. I figured I'd jump in and take a look at it, and then maybe I can give you guys an evaluation as to whether or not this is a good game to get yourself started into programming, or if you really do need some foundations before getting into it. So, we'll give the game half an hour as we usually do, and we'll see what's up here, friends. So, play. Pretty simple. The settings are pretty simple. So, getting to know C#, learning to declare variables and program and perform arithmetic operations. Okay. Do it. Let's do it. See what it's all about here. On one ordinary day in a large and secluded house in the middle of the forest, our hero woke up, a humanoid robot. Every morning it turns on to help people living here around the house do cleaning and carry out different assignments. Now there was no one in the nursery, so he decided to clean up on the table where a bunch of different things lay. Alright, welcome to the game where you can learn the basics of programming in one of the most popular languages. You have to solve problems by writing code and help the main character, the robot, overcome obstacles in his path and continue his story. Now let's tell you a little more. During the task, you can see its description in the upper left corner. In addition, by clicking the gray button in the corner, you can again get additional information that appears before the task. We need some kind of tool for programming, so a multifunctional pad is available to you. To turn on, just click on it. Okay, welcome to Coding Learn. Learn the basics of programming C#, one of the most popular languages. You have to solve problems by writing code to help the main character. Okay, you're getting that again. Okay, so this is just going back around again. Move cube. Right, move cube with a semicolon. This is important. Okay. So right, move cube. Sure. So public void execute. All right. So move cube. Don't use the prompt, spend no more than 5 minutes on a solution. Well, okay. Sure. Having laid things out in places, the robot headed to the other end of the room where there was another table. It was clean enough here, but the iron assistant was attracted to another. One of the households apparently decided to study programming and wrote a small program. It's remained open, and the robot, driven by its curiosity, decided to launch it. Guessing English is not their first language. Congratulations, you wrote your first program that works, but what actually happened? Why did we write what we wrote? We begin to get acquainted with the syntax of the language. Okay. If you look at the structure of a program, we first created the project in the C# application. You've seen that the starting template is quite complex. There are many different words, brackets, etc. All this, of course, makes sense, but it will become clear only later when we gain experience. In our programs, all code is not yet interesting to us will be hidden. But if you're extremely curious, you can find on the internet the C# documentation I'll learn first. Okay. Again, I don't think English must not be their first language. Our first programs will be limited to one method. Methods in C# are called functions that exist in other languages and execute a set of instructions written in them. The instructions in turn are different commands, whether it's to add two numbers, multiply them, or call another method, cause another set of instructions to be executed. Each statement must end with a semicolon. All C# programs start with the main method. This is the entry point of the program. We will write auxiliary methods that will be called including from main. Have you noticed that when you called the method in the last task, you wrote empty brackets? Why are they needed? You can pass arguments and brackets to the method, some data that can be used in the instructions of the method. Since the method didn't need any arguments, we left them empty. And they didn't translate this. Okay. Now let's practice calling methods with arguments. To do this, we will write almost an iconic output program to console of the phrase "Hello World." Console is in fact okay. So "Hello World" is a traditional way for all programmers to not only learn your first programming language, but also to learn new languages when you move from like C, C++ to Pascal to anything else. It gets you used to the syntax. And for those who are unaware what I mean by a language, there are different, I guess the best way to say it is there are different syntaxes and different compilers that you can write code against. At the end of the day, everything gets compiled down to something that either a virtual machine or the actual computer hardware can read. But even a virtual machine is something that's running on the computer hardware. But there's various mechanisms to do it. There's not one standard way to write code. There's a whole bunch of different ways to do it, and each has their strengths and their weaknesses. So C# is a more modern language. It has a virtual machine underneath of it. Java has a virtual machine underneath of it. There are others that around that, like Gradle and Elixir, and all these things have some sort of translation layer. You go more old school, you got your Pascal and C, C++. These are compiled languages. They get compiled down into actual machine readable code, and then that gets kind of shoved through the operating system and off it runs. So when we're saying a language, we're basically, it is essentially a language. It is essentially like learning like English versus Spanish or French or something like that, with one big difference, and that is there is pretty much a common root throughout all of them. A conditional is a conditional is a conditional, and you'll see a lot of commonality between things. An if statement probably is very similar in 9 or 10 different languages. It's just the syntax around it is a little bit different. Where you put your parentheses, where you put your braces, if any, and those kinds of things. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of explain that. Console is in fact a window, can interact with the program and data to it or receive it. You can call console methods by writing console followed by the name of some method. Unfortunately, our tablet does not support working with more than one window, so the output of the phrase will be somewhat conditional. You will not see the console, but we will practice programming. Okay. So right line of console class and pass the hello world. Right. So what they want us to do is to basically write console. I think it's right line, and then world like that. One thing that keeps tripping me up. Oh, I spend no more than 5 minutes. Well, I was explaining things. So well. The one thing that keeps tripping me up with with C# versus Java is that Java does camel case, so most of the methods have a lowercase letter they start with, and then they have an uppercase for the next words. Whereas C# just kind of says through it, every word has uppercase. So that's where I get a little bit, sometimes I confuse that. All things in this room were done, and our hero went out into the corridor. There was a door to the kitchen in the front of the nursery. There, the robot was also waiting for work, and therefore he approached the tightly closed door to open it. Data types and variables. We successfully called a method with an argument. It's time to figure out what we passed as an argument, data, or rather data types, and where they are stored variables. In general, any variable is some named area in the computer's memory that stores data at some address. Since it is named, using the name, we can access this area of memory and get the necessary data. By the way, data can be of different types. Data types are different depending on what we want to store in a variable, a number, a string, an object, or something else. For now, let's get acquainted with color equals green. Oh, that's some formatting for their text there. Let's get acquainted with integer type, int, that stores integers, both positive and negative, from some range. To declaring a variable, i.e. assign a name to some memory cell, you need to specify a data type and then separate by a space the name of the variable. Yeah. We've declared a variable, but so far it is useless. It simply does not store anything. We need to set it to some value, which we'll store in to do this. Okay. Yeah, they really didn't like reread what they wrote here. On the next line, after declaring a variable, you need to specify its name, put assignment operator, and write the value corresponding to the type of the variable. Now we know how to declare a variable and assign value to it, but this requires 2 lines of code each time. It would be great to perform these operations at the same time, and so you can do it. Assigning a value to a variable when it is declared is called initialization. It is done as follows. The variable is declared, and immediately after the name comes the equals operator. In some problems and in our videos, you may have noticed green words after double slash. These are comments. With their help, you can leave marks on the code to make it easier for other developers to understand. So if you remove the code from the program and not erase it, you can put a double slash in front of it, or if the text is multi-line, put it with a slash star and a star slash at the end. So first bit of, okay, so declare a key number variable of type int with value 55. Okay, open the door. So declare a variable here. This is the comment that they're talking about. So we just do int key number equals 55. So one bit of feedback here is you're not, as far as a tutorial goes, this tutorial is relying way too much on text. And the text is kind of, it is definitely assuming that you know something, right? Because it's not really explaining everything. It's kind of trying to, but it's not doing it in a very pragmatic way, right? It's just kind of lore dumping on you, and then saying write this, and that's not necessarily. I could see that being a very big disconnect between what you're reading and what you're typing. Right, you're not really retaining what you're reading. You're kind of typing stuff, and you're doing exactly what the program tells you to do, but you may not necessarily be rocking everything that's happened. So I think, as far as a teaching tool goes, there's too much of a disconnect between the learning and the actual viewing stuff. Like, it would have been better had they had been more like hands-on with it. Like, here is, you know, like, even if they had just code that was already written in there, and they could say, like, here's how it's declared this way, here's how it's declared that way, and then you could see it in the screen, you could go, oh, okay, this is different ways of doing it. Because what they were telling you there was basically, you could initialize a variable in one line, like what I just did with that one, or you can create a variable, it gets a default value, and then you can set that variable to whatever you want later on. I mean, that's basically that's basically what I was saying. It would have been nice if they had a better example where they showed you both examples and you kind of had to do it a certain way, but you know, it is what it is. Sitting in the refrigerator, the robot program chose a new task to perform to feed the fish that live in the aquarium in the corridor. The food lay in a separate compartment, and the robot began to look for it. Types float and double. We learned how to store integers and variables, but what if we need to store fractional numbers, or as they're also called, floating point numbers? Other data types will come to the rescue. Float and double, they can be written as a number with or without a fractional part. Yep. You might be wondering, why do we need to use different numeric types if they're intended for the same data? There are quite a few data types for storing integers and floating point numbers. Each of them has its own value range. For example, double represents a double precision number and can store many more decimal places than float, hundreds of characters. Some types, on the contrary, can store numbers from a smaller range than, for example, an int. This depends on the amount of memory allocated for the variable. For example, each variable of type int or float occupies 4 bytes, and double is already 8 bytes. Because computer memory is resource limited, when writing a large program, you should think carefully about where and what data types will fit best. That's a little disingenuous. It's true. It's definitely true that you should be careful how much memory you use. Nowadays, memory is really freaking cheap. Back in the day, this would have been more true. Really, the reason you use what exactly you need comes down to like processor architecture and stuff, right? Like, if you're doing like a 32-bit program, the size of your variables very much comes into play as far as performance goes, because depending on how large a variable it is, it might take a little bit for the processor to load that up, because you can only do, like in a 32-bit operating system, you can only load, let's see if I do my math correctly here, 16 would be 2 bytes, so 4 bytes, right? So you're doing like an int or a float in one shot, but then if you shove a double down there, it has to go to 2 different memory locations. It has to load both of those, and that takes some extra cycles to load that. Whereas a 64-bit, everything kind of fits into one bus call, and you don't have to. It can grab those larger numbers without taking an extra hit, kind of thing. So that's really that's more applicable to today than the amount of memory you're consuming per se. It really depends on what you're doing. If you're writing a device driver, then yeah, memory's still a very, very big thing. If you're writing an application that's meant to run on, say, a resource limited server in the cloud, again, memory's a big thing. If you're writing something that's on a consumer desktop computer, you're probably not as restricted, in that sense of the term. Keyword var. Now, a minute of useful life hacks. To initialize a variable, you can specify the keyword var instead of the data type. Then compiler will determine the type of variable automatically. This is a very useful feature of the C# language, which is not at all shameful to use. Using var is considered one of the good practices when writing code. Sort of. Okay. I'll let you have that one because I'm not actually sure on that. Personally, I prefer, if your language gives you data types, use the freaking data type. You know what I mean? Because if you start using, here's the problem with using var, right? There are languages that only give you var, like JavaScript. And that's fine. And that means basically the interpreter will figure out what your variable should be. The problem with using var in like a professional environment is that you could conceivably accidentally change the data type of it, and now you no longer have what you're expecting to have later on down the line. You might be expecting an integer, and then at some point you say, multiply it, and you happen to multiply it by something that ended up being a decimal number. You know, maybe it was a number that was entered by a user or something. And now your result of that is now a decimal number instead of an integer. And then later on down the line, you're expecting an integer and you don't have one. And that could be a problem. So that's why it's like, yes, var could be okay, but if I ever saw somebody using var in a strongly typed language, I would probably tell them to stop doing that, personally. So, because it's I'm surprised that they say it's good practice here, because to me, that is like a code smell beyond belief. You know, I mean, I guess it's good practice if you're the only person who's ever going to read your own code. You know, if you're in a team of other people, then just use the data types, learn them, use them, don't shy away from them, that kind of thing. Take feed. Correct a typo in the code to take a package of food by weight in kilograms. You need to take a box weighing 0.5 kilograms. When a variable is declared with the var keyword, its type is determined automatically based on the data assigned during initialization. When an integer is divided by an integer, the result is an integer without the remainder. Okay. Yeah. So var fullness 1 divided by 2. Take a package of food by weight in kilograms. You need to take a box weighing 0.5 kilograms. So what they're saying here is they're going to get an integer back on that. 1 divided by 2. So they'll actually get 0 for this. So what they would have to do is say 1.0 divided by 2.0, and technically you would probably have to do it as f here to say that it's a float. And then that'll give you 0.5. 0.5%. But yeah. And again, that's why it's like, you see that could be an easy mistake, which is why I don't think anybody should be using var unless there's a really darn good reason to be doing it. If you're writing code that's super polymorphic, or you're writing a variable that's going to be transported across the wire to some other system, maybe you can get away with that. But yeah, you're doing like, if you're ever going to do any kind of math on it, like use the freaking data types, you know. Having taken food, our hero went out into the corridor and went to the aquarium. All the fish seeing the 2-meter robot hid in stones and algae. But of course, the robot did not want to harm them, but only to pour food on them. At the same time, he began to calculate how many days of food remained. Since you now know both the numeric data types and their operations, it's time to practice. The following tests will use all the knowledge gained. Good luck. How many days will food last? In this task, you have to calculate how many days, not counting today, you'll have enough food provided that you feed the fish today. The method is passed a number of 2 types of fish, the daily norm for them and the amount of food. You need to return the number of days the food will last, excluding today's feeding. Convert a double to an int when assigning or passing to a method. Feed the value with. Okay. Let's see what they're doing here. So count fish feed. It takes fish type 1 count, fish type 2 count, double fish type 1 normal amount, fish type 2 normal amount, feed count. The amount, I guess that's the amount of feed left. This method is pass the number of 2 types of fish. Oh, the number of 2 types, so how many of type 1 and how many of type 2 fish you have, okay. You need to return a number of days the food will last. Right, you feed the fish today. So feed count, I guess, is the total count of feed left. And then the normal amount you gotta feed them. So let's think here. So you're gonna do feed count. So I'm guessing these are all integers. Well, except for the normal amount there. Okay, so yeah, okay, these are integers, those are doubles. Alright, so we'll say here, so let's think. Why is my brain not working right now? So, total days would be the fish type 1 count times fish type 1 norm, which is going to give me a. So I need to put I need to cast that to it again, which is. It's not going to be very. It's not going to be very. Well, no, I could do it that way. It's just going to give me. It's not going to give me an int back. I'm going to have to cast it to an int. That's fine, because they don't seem to care here. That plus fish type 2 count times fish type 2 norm, and then that would be all of that. All of that would be divided by feed count, which is a double, right? I want to do this here, another parenthesis around it, because I want this whole thing to cast back to an int. And then we just want to return total days, which I didn't actually tell you you needed to return it. So that'll be, and this may not even work the way I'm expecting it to, but let's just, yep, and the test for fit. So let's see here. So total days, they want, if I figure this one out. Fish type 1 count times normal is how much that will take. I could break it up into multiple lines as well. Fish type 2 count times the normal. That's like for 1 day. That's what it would be. And then divide that whole thing by the feed count. Should really give you the number of days you would have, theoretically. But it's got to cast it down to an int from a double. So I'm betting there's like some kind of shenaniganry happening there. What I could do is do this as a double. Let's take the cast off here for a second, and I can actually return in total days. Still going to be wrong though, because it's probably casting it incorrectly. So it wants to number of 2 types of fish, daily norm for them, and the amount of food. You return number of days the food will last, including today's feeding. How do you feed a fish today? how many days, not including today, you'll have enough food for what you feed the fish today. Starting with that, or passing to a method, please evaluate. So, what exactly are they looking for? So, say total days. Fish type 1 count, type 2 count. Well, I mean, we could break it up into one here. And I could say double. Feed 1 per day would be fish type 1 count. Times fish type 1 norm. Let's say double 2 per day fish type 2 count times fish type 2 norm, right? And then the total days would be basically the same thing, right? It would be feed 1 per day plus feed 2 per day. Divided by feed count. Right? Which is essentially what I just wrote. I mean, that's what they're asking for. Now, it's going to say that that's not correct. But that's, I mean, so what? Here's what I bet they did, and it's incorrect, but I'll do it this way. So they probably made these ints, which means the error is bubbling up here, right? So they probably went like this, and this is incorrect, and they shouldn't have done it this way, but I bet they did it this way, and that's why it's wrong. So int do that, and then they probably did int here total days by feed count. Right, they probably did this, and then they return total days. Cannot implicitly convert type double int. Explicit conversion exists. Oh. So they're doing... Oh, really? Okay. So they're doing it this way then. Interesting. 5 line 1. I don't know, 520. Yeah, it's the line numbers are all messed up here. I think that's what it's complaining about. Hello? Still giving me the same error? Really? For what? Deadline count times. For these? Is it really for that one? Really? Okay. An explicit conversion exists. Okay. 3 and 4. You're missing a cast. Okay. So, are they doing it this way then? Like that? Apparently not. We got the same error. That's interesting. That's really interesting. So you do this, and then feed 1 per day. Feed 2 divided by feed count gives you a double total days. Pass that to an int. Yeah, they've done something wrong in their logic here, I think. Yeah, no crap. So basic. I guess that's undo. Yeah, my guess is they've screwed up in their test because they apparently have done. When you're casting stuff like this, you're just asking for trouble. Right? I mean, that's just like no regular person would do this in general. That's unfortunate. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously, it's possible that, I mean, and I have to say, I don't write in C#, so it's possible that there's some quirk of C# that I don't understand. It's very possible that there's some quirk of C# I don't understand, and that's what's coming out in here. We can, just for kicks and giggles, we can do it this way. Right? Yeah, and it still has the same problem. Which is pretty hilarious. So I get the feeling that they were doing some shenaniganry here that isn't correct. And this having to wait before you get your next tip is probably a bad idea, as well, as far as like trying to make this work. Anyway, let's just let's call it there. That's unfortunate because I feel like they're not teaching you good code. They're kind of teaching you to mix your P's and Q's, and that's not a good idea in general. So yeah, what do I think of Coding Learn here? I would not recommend this for anyone who's trying to learn a language in general, programming language. I think they don't introduce the concepts very well. And to be frank, even if you do know a little bit about programming, I probably wouldn't recommend this game either, because it seems like they're encouraging bad practices in how you write your code here. And that's unfortunate, because for something that says like Coding Learn, you would hope that it was written by someone who understands understands code smells in the language and knows to avoid said code smells when coming up with what is ostensibly a teaching tool here. So yeah, I can't recommend it, unfortunately. Even for $2, I wouldn't recommend it because you're not really learning things the right way, in my humble opinion. It's a good attempt on the developer's part, and I appreciate the effort, but it's I would not recommend it for as a teaching tool. Honestly, it was a nice little side thing that they did, a nice little side project, probably, a way for them to kind of get their feet wet into maybe coding a game, and for that, hopefully they got what they were looking for out of that. But yeah, no, I'd have to say no on this one. Sorry, folks. But this has been Coding Learn. It is by 12ad1 and published by Baker's Dozen. It is $2 and fully released out on Steam. As always, I will leave links down in the description so you can do your own due diligence. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, and I will see you next time.